pilot crew job today. This is a common crew job in Star Traders Frontiers. In fact, your ship will start with more than one of them, no matter which one you choose. They're found through, as the Wiki will show, through contacts, but more commonly you'll find them any place with a starport rating greater than 4. Super common. They primarily give the pilot skill, not so surprising. They also give some navigation and a little bit of tactics. All very important stats. Navigation will help you in long range, especially with accuracy. Pilot will be a significant contributor to your ship defense. It will either be strong dice or it will be standard dice, depending on whether you have more pilot or electronics. If they're tied, it doesn't matter, so I don't know which is used, and that's, yeah, who cares? So generally, you'll want to be stacking either a whole lot of pilot or a whole lot of electronics to maximize your defense. But if you take that too far, you're going to have a problem because you'll start failing your deep space rolls. And missing your pilot rolls can be problematic because some of them can't even be saved with skill saves, such as trying to get through a blockade or a pirate fleet surrounding a planet. You can't use a skill save talent for that. So you actually do need the pilot's raw skill points. So pilot is very important in a number of ways. Range change, once you get close, pilot matters there. Their contribution to navigation and tactics also help. Ship combat, your pools, well by pilots. They also have some of the most useful talents for ship combat. And most of these are available in the first 5 ranks of the class. All right, let's go into the details. The first talent that you'll have available is Expert Maneuver. Automatically passes a failed pilot test in any situation, including deep space travel, landing, or hyperwarp travel. This notably does not include a few situations I mentioned earlier, such as getting past a blockade of some sort, a few other things, but it'll handle a lot of cases. It's good to have probably a couple of these if you can afford them at the beginning of the game. Guided Fire. This isn't my favorite talent, but I do use it a lot because after a certain point, my pilots that have been with me the entire game playthrough, I start needing to put some points somewhere in their talents, and this ends up being selected. But it does have some value. In earlier videos, I was not mentioning anything that had to do with the small craft. I can talk a little bit more of that as I have a little more experience with it, but still, foes do not have access to small craft, so talents aren't quite as relevant. Still, Guided Fire gives a small boost to accuracy, 15%, which can matter if you're just on the verge of not being able to hit your foe. Nicely give 10% bonus critical, which I'll get to in a minute, and a small bonus to hitting craft. Right now, that's going to be a problem for you as your opponent applies that. If you have small craft going out, as a 10% increase in chance to hit craft can effectively double the accuracy or the probability of hitting one of your craft of a plasma cannon, because it only has a base of 10%. That just adds to it. It does not multiply. So you're not getting 11% chance with that plasma cannon, you're getting 20%. So Guided Fire can be a threat there. But overall, I usually spam this talent when I want combat to end a little bit more quickly, hence the critical helps with that. Or if I'm in a situation where I'm using radiation-heavy weapons, because radiation damage is increased by critical hits, void damage is not. And so getting some extra critical on radiation can help take out the crew faster and components. So it's actually pretty good for a disabling setup, but only if you're using radiation weapons. Otherwise, it's going to magnify your standard damage, and that will take out the hull a little too quickly. So if you're using radiation weapons, boost your critical, take out the crew. If you're not, you're using standard or void weapons primarily, this is going to hasten the ship's demise and not help you take out the crew very well. All right, moving on to Sure Landfall. Lands efficiently on a world, reduces operation time to 1 turn and fuel cost to 1. Landing on a world can take a stupidly long amount of time if you don't have this talent or one just like it. And so this can save you quite a bit of time, keeping you ahead on the experience curve. The fuel cost to 1 is also handy. It can take like 17 fuel, some crazy amount to land on a planet. I've never piloted a rocket ship, so what do I know? But it sounds like a lot of fuel. There are a couple of things to note here. One, orbitals, this doesn't matter on because you get orbital landing. It's treated as though orbitals have Sure Landfall for free anyway without using your talent. The other piece is this does not conflict with your at port talents. So ones that like show you contacts with a certain percentage of the time if you land at port. That does not compete in the same pool with the short landfall style talents that are on landing. Once you are landed, it's a different talent pool, so you're not selecting this talent is never a bad idea. It does not compete with anything else. So even though it has a small effect, you'll use it all the time. It adds up over the course of the game, and it's not making it harder for you with other very valuable at port talents. All right, evasive maneuvers, the number one spammed ship combat talent of the entire game, bar none. I say this with confidence, not even having player data, because I know how to play this game, and I know how anyone who survives in this game plays this game. You must use this talent, at least to some degree up front, then later you can diversify. But at some level, you're going to be crippling yourself if you don't have this talent, at least with 1 or 2 stacks. I usually try to have 6 or 7 of them, because I'm a little crazy with pilots on my very large ships by the end of the game, but you'll usually be fine with just 4. Yes, you still need quite a few, because if you run out of these and you're relying on them for defense, it's bad time. So it gives a solid 25% to your defense, which is a massive amount. Not getting hit is king in this game. But even if you do get hit, it gives a 5% bonus to shield and armor, softening the blows that do get through until you can stack another evasive maneuvers on it. And yes, they do stack with itself. That is very handy. It applies for 3 turns, but since it takes effect at the beginning of your turn, it's effectively 4 turns of fewer and mitigated hits. Very valuable. Pro tip, do not follow this talent with the Navigator talent of Vigilant Scanners. While they do stack nicely, they will both expire on the exact same turn, taking your plus 50% defense bonus down to 0 immediately, not giving you a chance to kind of layer and stagger your defensive talents, because Vigilant Scanners has 1 turn fewer effect or duration. All right, Sharp Steering. This is also a crucial talent, much more so for captains that are wanting to avoid or escape combat than anyone else. The 15 range change and 10 escape, they stack with multiple invocations of the talent, but range change and escape stack with each other when you are trying to escape. Escaping means you are retreating from combat. From range 5, you're trying to get out. It means when you're trying to go from range 4 to range 5, trying to get further out of enemy's firing range, whatever, trying to get closer to the escape range. And it applies if you are in range 5 or range 4, trying to maintain your distance and your opponent is trying to close with you. All of those situations use the escape bonus and the range change. And so this is giving you 25 strong dice, which is a massive bonus that can tilt the odds in your favor. If you are fighting a Xeno ship and you don't want to be fighting a Xeno ship, on your first turns, you almost always just want to be spamming Sharp Steering. Try to escape. Fire what weapons you have in the hopes that you can cripple something of them to slow them down. But use Sharp Steering, try to escape. Next turn, use Sharp Steering, try to escape. Next turn, use Sharp Steering, try to escape. Next turn, you guessed it, use Sharp Steering, try to escape. After 4 turns, if you haven't done it, you're probably dead. But you've probably escaped in your first or second turn if you have built your ship properly for your difficulty level. Sharp Steering is the answer to escaping quickly. The only competing talent, in my opinion, is Bolt, which is a spy talent. But otherwise, Sharp Steering is the way to go. It is better than Hyperwarp Navigator's Fast Getaway. Fast Getaway does not last as long, cannot be used from as many positions, and does not give as much pure ability to escape. It does give you a little damage mitigation, but that is nothing when you're just trying to get out of combat. So I highly recommend Sharp Steering. Do not prioritize or use Hyperwarp Navigator's Fast Getaway if you can avoid it. Swift Route is an okay talent. It competes with a lot of really good ones, though, so I tend not to ever get it. Precision Planning and Twitch Reflexes and Hyperwarp Jump reduces fuel cost by 2 plus navigation skill. They tend not to have, pilots don't have the most navigation skill. There's a similar talent with Hyperwarp Navigator that has 4 plus their navigation skill. So not only is it 2 more fuel it saves, but also their navigation's higher. So I tend to just get the Navigator talent and ignore this one. If you somehow have a build where you're not using Hyperwarp Navigators, then this would come into play and be valuable. Although the Explorer can also kind of fill this role if you needed it. Broadside Angle. This is more of a threat when you see it used against you than anything that I would encourage you to use yourself. Let's go over the bad first. It drops your defense 25%. You have to be doing something very, very gutsy to be deciding, I'm just going to eat every hit that comes at me for the next 3 turns. Or, since it applies at the beginning, 4 turns. That's an extremely high cost. So either you have so much defense that it just doesn't matter, in which case your other stats are probably so high that it doesn't matter to use the talent to begin with, or your mitigations are maxed out and you just somehow don't care about the crew casualties. And speaking of crew casualties, you also take 15% reduction to armor this whole time. So your ship is going to take a bigger beating, and to a lesser extent, your crew and components will. You can only use these from these 3 positions, the closer range. It would have to be something just amazing to persuade me to ever use this talent. It does have a good set of bonuses. They are not amazing enough to validate this, in my opinion. 40% damage is substantial. Unfortunately, in the game, even if it's you take 40% more damage, they take 40% more damage or something like that. Wouldn't be worth it because the repair bills are so high for even fights. It's not a good idea. You want to be overwhelming your opponent always in this game. If you're just barely scraping through a battle, you've had a financial loss. 25% accuracy is great, but if you're not able to hit without it, there are a lot of other talents you should be using instead. Talents that don't also sacrifice your ability to continue fighting. So I can't justify ever choosing this talent. Twitch Surge, however, this is a fan-hated one ever since the AI got the ability to use it. I celebrated that because I like the AI using things against me. It makes the game harder, more interesting, but it is pretty obnoxious. So you must be moving forward to use Twitch Surge from these 4 positions, anything but boarding range. So you have to commit the reactor points to that, but then you use Twitch Surge, and you have a 0% chance to fail. You will definitely change range. Nothing can stop it. No talent, no amount of dice will save that. You will always move closer. And you have a 10% plus whatever your quickness is on the pilot who's using it to advance 2 positions instead of 1. That's a cool perk. At most, you can be looking in the range of like 40 to 50 if you have all the traits lined up right. Percent chance of this happening. In reality, it's more like a 30% chance that you can expect to see this happen with 2 positions at once. This really bites when the AI uses it and you don't have a bunch of middle or close range weapons. But sometimes the AI will use it and then it will manually retreat a little bit and then use it again like an idiot. If that happens, great. The dance of stupid death, and they'll get to die. But it can be a problem when a ship uses this to get really close and then boards you, or it gets really close and then hits you with weapons that you're not ready for. As a player, some players do like to use this to quickly get into boarding range, especially with a smaller ship, and then destroy the foe before combat takes very long. For me, I question using it as my style is a little more conservative. It's an aggressive move because if you're starting at range 5 or range 4 with Twitch Surge, or possibly range 3 with Flash Charge, possibly range 3 with Flash Charge, you're still advancing with a talent, and thus not using evasive maneuvers or some equivalent boost my defense talent. And so you're relying on your base ship stats to avoid an enemy attack. If you're playing on Impossible or anything close to it, that means you're going to be eating some hits along the way. And I don't like getting hit once if I can avoid it. So Twitch Surge is usually not my favorite go-to, but there are cases where you just need to get out of range 5 and 4 as quickly as possible to take advantage of better ship agility or get out of the sweet spot for their torpedoes and missiles. There is no counter to Twitch Surge. Currently, the devs have currently stated that they do not plan to make any counter to Twitch Surge or change the talent. Go figure. All right, Swift Sweep. So we're on to the rank 8 talents that are the least exciting. When spying the orbit of the system, remove a risk card. This is the only pilot talent. This is almost the only pilot talent that is not very related to piloting and ship combat. So it does what it says in the tin, removes a risk card. Pretty nice to have. You'll probably stack a few of these with your base pilot crew over time. Devastating Shot. I have selected this talent exactly once, and that is visible in one of my recent streams in the Impossible Commander series. these on-hit crippling effects, they're a little different. So the talent's description will say this crippling attack. That is actually different from a crippling effect from a crippling hit. Crippling hits can be removed by certain talents. Crippling attacks that apply debuffs, like this one, cannot be, with a single exception. So in general, these are not removable by anything but time. But you do have to hit your foe, even after you select this talent. You have to hit them at least once during the round. Then once you do, you're cutting down their damage by a quarter, which could be nice if they're hitting you. If you have some other way to keep them from hitting you, though, that's probably better. And it knocks down their range change, which can help if they're trying to escape out of close range, because it's only usable from the close 3 ranges. It could keep them from boarding, perhaps, and it does last an awfully long time. So there are some very rare niche cases where I can see this being of value, mostly if you're using agility focused engines, though. Forward thrusters. All right, here is one of the talents I'm proud of because I designed it. And Andrew did the cover art and actually implemented it in Core and whatnot, but it was a fan submission, namely mine, and so I feel pretty proud about this one. I also really like this talent for its own sake. Yeah. Rank 11 is going to take a while to get here, but it has some interesting benefits. Buffs your ship with 10% defense, not a lot, 20% shield, which is actually pretty massive, 5% armor to stack on as well, 20 range change bonus, but costs 40 escape for the next 3 turns. And it can only be used from 5th position, meaning you cannot use it after you've used flash charge immediately, and you can't use it after you're already advancing. This is my favorite talent for dealing with neutral foes. If I have a foe that has -1 hostility or 0 or a positive numbers hostility, that means they're not going to shoot me on the first turn. That means I can use this to get a pretty strong chance to change range to get closer, to get to range 4. That 20 range change can help a lot. Not as good as Twitch Surge, as that's an infinite chance to move. It's 100% chance to move forward, but 20 strong dice is pretty good. At the same time, I am boosting my defenses a little bit. I find that 10% plus an evasive maneuvers on the next turn, or a barrel roll if I'm feeling fancy, or a wild flying, which is usually my follow-up, that is just enough to make it so that even the more accurate foes are not hitting me on the second round once they realize that I'm fighting them and not just flying away. Again, this is for the foes that are not shooting the first turn because they have -1 or more positive hostility with you. And even if they do hit you on that second round, you do have some pretty substantial mitigation here that really helps. Now, forward thrusters is a terrible idea if you are ever thinking of retreating during that time, because you cannot remove this buff until it's over, and you're taking a net -20 to that kind of range change. That also applies if you're wanting to stay at range 4 and your opponent's closing on you, because that also uses escape. All right, wild flying. This is a great one to follow up with. It seems to have a really nasty negative that's actually pretty minor. So wild flying, another one that I designed, debuffs your ship with 15% accuracy loss, and you take 10 morale damage per turn for the next 3 turns. The way these talents work, it's effectively 4 turns. In return, you get 10% armor and 30% defense, 5% better than evasive maneuvers. The reason to use wild flying is, A, you don't want to use up all your stacks of evasive maneuvers, sure. You probably have both talents on this pilot. But B, it is, you don't mind the accuracy loss because you're already hitting your enemy reliably. Once you're already hitting them, it doesn't matter if you hit them by a lot or hit them by a little, you're still hitting them. And the morale damage is really, really small, especially on larger ships. That is 10 morale loss spread across the entire crew theoretically, but usually just imagine one of your crew members is randomly hit with 10 morale loss. That is not a big deal. So if that's in 4 times, not a big deal at all. And you can recover that with lots of talents or just spice in the hall afterward. That is a small, small, small amount of morale. Very low chance that's going to cause an issue for you. Very low, and only if you're taking lots of hits, which the 30% defense should help prevent. So my combo is usually wild flying after wild forward thrusters once I'm at range 4, and that's giving me 40% defense, which is usually enough to keep things going, and they're not able to escape that first turn because of the bonus range change. So that's my secret combo that I really like. So I do recommend the use of most of the pilot talents, just a couple that never get used, and they're in the same category or same spot. same tier. But the pilot is just a wealth of really, really strong talents, and you will make great use of them. You just have to know when to use them at the right time.